Hi, my name is Chef Mark Valentine. I'm here at the Acton Farmers Market doing a cooking demonstration of local ingredients from the different farms here at the Acton Farmers Market. Today we're going to be doing 3 recipes. We're going to be doing a zucchini casserole. We're going to do a farmers market gazpacho, and we're also going to do a farmers market salad of some of the local produce and that I found going to all the different stalls this morning. We're going to get started by going over our ingredients for the zucchini casserole, and then we'll start to prep. Our zucchini casserole is going to consist of green zucchini, golden zucchini, tomatoes, onions, oregano, Parmesan cheese, extra virgin olive oil, and some salt and pepper. It's a very simple recipe that incorporates what we just found abundance of. This time of year, you'll find a lot of zucchini, tomatoes, onions are all coming up from the warm weather. It's almost the end of harvest, so your zucchini plants are finishing up, everything's turning nice and ripe, and tomatoes are abundant. Sometimes they'll just over-ripen on the plants if you don't pick them fast enough. I like to use the golden and green zucchini because it gives a nice color contrast to when you cut and into the zucchini and present it to your guests. So that's what we'll be doing. They're basically the same type of vegetable. The yellow zucchini tends to be a little drier than the green zucchini, but the golden zucchini is not related to the summer squash. Some people will think it's a summer squash, but it is a zucchini, where zucchini and summer squash are different varieties of squash. There's a few tricks to know when working with fresh tomatoes. You can either do it the easy way and leave the skin on, or you can remove the skin and the core, and this will give you a smoother tomato. We're going to do both here. I'm going to show you how to do it with skin on and with skin off. To remove the skin of a tomato, you cut the core out, take your knife, go gently around. You're better off using a paring knife, but a French knife is what I'm most comfortable with. And then at the top of the tomato, make an X mark. Just cut it ever so slightly. You can see about 1/8 of an inch of a diagonal cut on it. So after you've done that, there's 2 ways to peel these. You can either gently just cut along, take your time. It's almost if you were peeling an apple. And sometimes you get lucky and the skin will just peel off. Another way to peel tomatoes is to, after you've cored your tomatoes and made your crosshatch, drop them in boiling water for 30 seconds, remove them, stick them in an ice bath. Tomatoes will cool, they won't cook, and the skins will just fall off. You can just peel them with your fingers when you do. That's called concasseing a tomato, when you blanch it in water for a minute and then peel the skin. But I'm going to do the fast way and take the skin off. And what we'll end up with are tomatoes that you won't notice any of that skin that sometimes you'll find if you just chop up a tomato and cook with it. The skin is fine. It has most of the fiber in it. The best part of skin on vegetables is the amount of fiber in them. So I recommend never peeling carrots or peeling apples. So as you can see, we have a beautiful tomato here. It's all peeled. We'll discard of our skin. What I have here is I have a pan. I would recommend a glass dish, but seeing we are outside, it's much safer to use foil. But any casserole dish will work, as long as it's about over 1 inch deep, because we're going to make 3 layers. We're going to put a layer of zucchini, we're going to put a layer of tomatoes, then we're going to top it with zucchini and Parmesan crumbs. So the best way, after you've peeled your tomatoes or not peeled them, you want to make slices. You want to make about a 1/4 inch slice, because this will give a consistency to the zucchini. It's going to add liquid to it and flavor. So as you can see through magic, I already have, this would be 2.5 pounds of sliced tomatoes. So now for prepping the zucchini, one thing to remember, always wash your vegetables. Even if it comes from an organic farm, animals go through fields, and it's very important. All these vegetables have been washed. It's very important to make sure that just run water on them. There's products out there with soap. All you're doing is just trying to get rid of any dirt that's on the skin because it can't penetrate the skin. When working with zucchini, what I want to get is slices. You can see I have some here. I'm looking for a long, thin diagonal slice. What's also great to use if you have what's called a mandolin, or if you have a vegetable slicer, you can just sit there and you'll get a much better consistency than hand chopping it. So, but for the sake of the demo, I'm going to hand chop it, and I get rid of my end, and I just slowly going to get, as they call them, silver dollar rounds. You can see that you should be able to get about 25 slices. You do much better to do it on a mandolin, but you can see we got our slices. And as you can see, the zucchini's real dry. The seeds are. When we cut the green zucchini, you'll notice on your hands that the green zucchini has more liquid in it. And again, we just got rid of the end. The end you can use for aesthetic reasons. I don't use it. Now, the one end I don't recommend using is the stem end. So that can get a little bitter where it's been getting all its nutrients in. So usually I only go down to about 1 inch because I find that you can get some bitterness. And also, zucchini can be very sticky. You'll notice sometimes you cut a lot of zucchini, your hands will be sticky and you'll get a green substance. Yesterday I got a yellow substance by slicing so many zucchinis. So, like I say, this part, you can use the whole piece. But don't go all the way to the end. It's not, you'll notice a bitterness and it can affect the flavor of your dish. I also like a little sliced onion. Now, onion is all about taste. Some people don't like onions. Some people enjoy the flavor of onion. I think it adds a nice texture and a little bit of that umami flavor in it. To cut an onion, best way to do it, hold it tight in your hand, cut off your top, cut off your bottom. These can be saved for stock. They're great. You can stick them in Ziploc bags, keep them in your fridge for about a month. They give a great color to chicken stock, the onion skins. A lot of restaurants will save their onion skins to give their chicken stock a real bright yellow flavor. If you think of classic chicken soup at a restaurant, a lot of times it will have a real yellow golden hue to it. It's from the, it's not from the chicken, it's from the onion skins. So we've taken our first layer off. Don't be shy too. You see how I took the first layer off? But I have this bitter piece here. And when I go to cook that, if you sometimes fry onions and you know a little piece will burn or two, it's that skin, because there's still skin on this. So what we want is the sweet onion. We can see there's no skin. So if I had chopped that and fried it, it would have dried up, and you can see it's very thin and dry. So it would have burnt before the meaty part of the onion. So for the onion, we're just going to do a quick slice of just thin as you can possibly get. Because like I say, we don't want it to flavor. One trick to chopping is always keep your fingers behind the knife. Never put fingers in front of the knife. It leads to danger. And you'll see I don't always look while I'm cutting. Don't do that at home. Only if you've been practicing for a long time. Okay. We have our pan. Like I say, I would recommend a Pyrex, but this 2-inch foil pan will work great. What we want to do is, so I have extra virgin olive oil. This came from Idlewild Farms. This is $8 olive oil. That's fantastic to cook with. It's a blend of oils. It's an Italian company, but they blend Greek, Spanish, and Italian olive oils. It's San Giano. I recommend it. It's better for than $15 olive oils. It's a great olive oil, and it has a lot of flavor without being bitter. That's why it's great to cook with. Anytime you're layering, making a casserole, always be sure to oil that first layer well, because that's what will stick, whether you're making moussaka or making a vegetable casserole. And you can see I'm just pouring it. It's not drenched in it. It's just, we're coating it. Another trick is salt and pepper the bottom, because we know we're going to salt and pepper the top and the middle, but if we don't get that bottom, this will help the flavor penetrate all the different layers. So what we're going to do next is we're going to layer our zucchini. And as you can see, this is about a 20-minute prep. You should be able to do it about that if you're just doing one. And so I take a layer and I just start layering them like that. You don't have to be fancy. You can use just one zucchini. You can cheat, and so you don't have to layer them so neatly. I do think, though, that it looks nicer when you go to cut it by, let me do 2 layers and I'll show you what I mean. You want to go about halfway up the other zucchini so you overlap them. And as you can see, I'm overlapping them about halfway. And that way we're going to get different textures too, because this will be a little bit softer done, and in the middle we'll have more texture. So I'm a big believer in having different textures in your food. It adds a nice contrast in every bite by having different textures and flavors. Will you turn that off 5 minutes? So that's why I do it this way of layering it. Like I say, the crisscrossing only matters to if you know that it looks nice inside. With cooking, there's always the boring period. There's the creative part, there's the eating part, and then there's this part, just doing it. Okay, we have our layer. You can see that. What I'm going to do next is we're going to add our tomatoes. I just like to rinse my hands before I move on to other foods. So you can see you're not, with the tomatoes, you just want to do a layer too. They don't have to overlap because these tomatoes are so wonderful. They're just going to melt into the casserole. I also have plums and I have the beefsteaks. The good thing about a casserole, second tomatoes work well too. Some of these tomatoes are seconds from Applefield Farms, right down here. I actually like the seconds for the casserole because they're a bit juicier, they're a bit riper. They're usually half the price. So if you have your own tomatoes and they're a little overripe on the vine, this recipe works great. Okay, so you can see it's not perfect. You'll see some gaps, but there's enough there to where the flavor is going to penetrate down. Again, I went to school in France. You salt and pepper everything. It's the law in France. I prefer ground pepper because you get the true flavor of the pepper. It's never sitting around. It just takes a few turns and it just adds so much flavor. Now we're also going to add oregano. I like oregano instead of basil because the basil can turn black on you. Fresh basil, if it steams, will turn black and you get the flavor, but it doesn't look as nice. It's fine to serve basil on top of it once it comes out, but I don't recommend, and I'm not a fan of dried basil. I think the horrible flavor, so I really do. So I think dried oregano really has a lot of depth and flavor and gives it that smell to Italian. And then some Parmesan cheese. This is grated Parmesan Reggiano, aged 24 months. This cheese also came from Idlewild Farms. And now our onions. So for our onions, I even less than the tomatoes. Basically, I want the onions just to sort of perfume the dish and not even know they're there. That's why I don't use garlic too. I find garlic takes away from the zucchini. So you can see It's about a quarter of an onion, of a small onion. Then what's important is more olive oil, because we want that olive oil flavor to penetrate. It's healthy oil, and when you're eating the casserole, it's great to take either a bagel or a baguette and get that. There'll be liquid left in the casserole dish. Save it. It's so good. Okay. Our last step is we're going to build again. So we start going, do our layering. And we're going to do it halfway. Also, I think, as with most casseroles, this dish can taste better the next day. So it's a nice dish to make and then have it for dinner or for lunch the next day. It just reheat it in the oven to crisp up the breadcrumbs, and it tastes amazing. Is it hot? Casserole? Will you put the check for temperature? Should be 140. So we cheated and we baked one so we can have a sample of this in 5 minutes. So while this is baking, we'll have. Can you smell the casserole? Yes. Again, this is 6 ingredients. And if you're, watching your sodium, I recommend, if you're watching your sodium, do the bottom layer and do the top layer, okay? Gets a little salt. Be light on it. Also, use a sea salt, or that is better for you, a little healthier than using an iodine salt, an iodine. I'm a big believer in using sea salt or kosher salt. Okay, so you see, we're back to there again. This is our step. What we're going to do next is we're going to make Parmesan crumbs. See the gloves? So, in the recipe, called for a cup. I don't really measure. I do this for a living. So I just sort of eye everything. Basically, you want your crumbs to be about a 2-to-1 ratio to your Parmesan cheese. Now, the way my grandmother made this is she would melt butter and put it on, and because she loved nothing but butter, but I think olive oil tastes better and is much healthier. So the trick to doing this too, you'll see the recipe works. The one I did in there is done directly to the recipe. You want your crumbs to be moist with the oil. So you mix them up. I can see I'm gonna need a little more. So you see how all our crumbs have that golden color to them? And if you look, you can see the Parmesan to breadcrumbs ratio is about 2-to-1. That's what we want. Now, we don't need to salt that. Parmesan cheese has salt in it. What we need to do is finish seasoning our casserole with a little oregano and some pepper and a touch of olive oil. So, again, light oregano as you would pepper. Okay, so think of it like that. When you're doing an herb, think about how much pepper you'd put in with anything. And it's right about there, it would be correct. I'm going just a touch of olive oil because I want the zucchini to be nice and moist. And now we're going to top it. Again, you don't have to use the breadcrumbs too. If you wanted to make it gluten-free, what I would recommend is bake it with the recipe, and halfway through put the Parmesan cheese on. If you put it on now, it will crisp up too much. This has to bake about 45 minutes. But if you wanted it gluten-free, easily just go Parmesan about halfway through, be wonderful. So I'm a big believer in adapt the recipe to what your dietary needs are. I mean, I also do this with ground beef and tomato sauce and make it almost lasagna. Instead of adding the tomatoes, I would have added ground beef, a little ricotta, and some red sauce. So there's many variations to doing there. Now, you see, I think I need a little bit more breadcrumbs because that's the best part. So if you need more, just add them. Just like if you cut all your zucchinis and you don't have enough, you might have to add a zucchini. You might have some zucchini left over from the amount I tell you. So it's always a work in progress. Okay, there we are. As you can see, like that. I recommend if you're doing it for the next day, still bake it off because it will get soggy. Your crumbs will get soggy and they'll never get crisp. Because when it comes out, you want it to have, you want it to look like this. You want it to be nice and crisp. And you can see the knife goes in. You can see we had a little oil there. That shows it's done. So, and you see how it shrinks down? They're about the same size. So, because of all the water in the zucchini. So, give me 2 minutes and I'll have samples. What we're going to do next is a gazpacho. We're going to do what I call a farmer's market gazpacho. These are all ingredients that came from Flat Mentor's restaurant, farm, Dragonfly Farm, and Applefield Farm. I went to the farms and picked up all the wonderful produce that we're going to make a soup today, a traditional Spanish soup, gazpacho, that can be served chilled or room temperature. The basic ingredients for a gazpacho are tomatoes, cucumber, peppers, onions, and then you can enhance it with other flavors and herbs. Usually a traditional gazpacho will have sherry vinegar, olive oil in it. So it has an acidic, rich flavor to it. So the great thing about gazpacho is you cook nothing. Everything is just chopped and pureed. Also, you could also just do a chopped version or you can do a pureed version. We're going to do a pureed version today using a blender. You could use a food processor, a hand wand. Any of those would work. We have fresh tomatoes. So again, you can either peel and core them like I talked about before, or if you're going to puree the soup, you don't need to skin them as much because the turbo blender will take care of all that. Almost like a smoothie, how you can put in a carrot with the skin on and you don't even know the skin was on. So if you were going to peel them, again, we'll just review. You would take the tomato, you would cut the center out, the core, you would make a cross mark on the end of the tomato, and you can either then peel the skin, or you can do a quick concasse, core your tomato, cut your tomato, drop it in boiling water for 30 seconds, remove it, stick it in an ice bath, and the skin will fall off and the tomato will still be raw. But like I said, we can just do the tomatoes raw with the skin on, so that's what we're going to do. With gazpacho, it doesn't have to be a fine dice. You just need a dice because all the work's can be done by the blender. Now with cucumbers, what I like to do is seed and peel them. This is your basic traditional New England cucumber. I've already peeled it, and the seeds, tomato seeds have trouble breaking up. So what I like to do is I just remove them. You take a spoon, you put it, you make a canoe, you put it in a cavity, and then you just remove them. Just like that. And there really isn't much flavor to the seeds, so I don't find them useful for saving for stock or anything else. So I do compost them. So you have your cucumber, it's been peeled and seeded. We have our chopped tomatoes. Next we're gonna prep. So for my cucumber, I just cut it in half. I'm just doing a quick dice. Doesn't have to be exact, you're pureeing it. If you were to do this as a chopped version and not puree it, then you'd want them all to be the same. But because we're doing the fast summer version, just give them a quick dice. Quick dice, and off you go. Now, I already have prepped out all my ingredients to exact order, so I'm not going to use a cucumber because then I'll knock my ratios off. For prepping a pepper, easiest way, this is called a bullhorn pepper, local pepper. It's not hot. It's just, it's a more traditional pepper. We're used to the bell peppers, which is a hybrid. This is an original. It's not a it's a non-hybrid. Heirloom. Yes, it's an heirloom pepper. So, cut your top off, remove your seeds, hold your pepper with both hands, and just slice it down the middle. You'll get two sides. Remove the seeds. They'll have a bitterness. Also, the pith for hot peppers, that's where all your heat will be, right in the pith there. So it does have a slight bitterness to it, so I remove it. I shake my seeds out. Again, seeds and the pith aren't worth saving because they're bitter. And then we're just going to do a quick dice on our peppers. Like I say, they don't have to be exact. You just want to have them chopped, so we're going to puree them. So with the onion, you can use yellow or red. I prefer the red. I think it's a little less astringent. But again, for your onions, take the top off, take the bottom off. Save the skins because they're great in stock. The trick for a diced onion is make sure it's flat there. And then if you take your knife and you cut down 3/4 of the way, just make a slice. Make a slice so you get 4 slices. Bring it back again. Go 3/4 of the way. And then when you turn it around, so now that you're looking at the lines, and chop, and you got a nice little dice there. So you have a nice even dice. So we have all our vegetables prepped. What we're going to do now is measure out our other ingredients. So we're going to use, this is a Vitamix. You can use a bullet blender. Any high speed, high revving blender works, especially, yeah, we grab it. Especially the blenders for making smoothies. Those little ones they have now. Make sure we have our power. So, what's great about this soup, no pots, 1 container. It calls for 2 pounds of tomatoes. So, we're going to add our tomatoes. Oops. Sometimes the prepped item's harder. There we go. We have our 1 cucumber peeled and seeded. We have half our red onion. We have our small, medium-sized bullhorn pepper. Now, can I have the V8? Now what we need to do is add some liquid to our, so like I talked about before, we'll use sherry vinegar, olive oil, and what I like to call is my favorite vegetarian stock, V8 juice. So V8 juice is great to use for any vegetarian item. It's great to use in lasagna. It's a little dry when you pull it out. Take some V8, pour it around the edge. V8 has more uses to it. As much use as water in cooking to me. It's just, it has great flavor. It's vegetarian, gluten-free, vegan. It covers it all. For sherry vinegar, now this is where I got to cheat and look at the recipe. So for the sherry vinegar, it called for 2 tablespoons. So that's what we're going to add. And again, do everything to your own taste. You don't like vinegar? Put just a little bit. If you like acidic foods, put a lot more vinegar in. Do it to taste. Make it, try it, and add more. 2 tablespoons. 1, 2. Like I say, I measure by use. Olive oil, about half a cup. What the olive oil will do is give it a richness. Now, if you let it sit a few hours, you might have to shake it up because the olive oil will raise to the top. Fresh chopped parsley. It gives it an hibiscus flavor that adds a real depth to the gazpacho. Now, traditional gazpacho can have bread or almonds. Almonds are very common in Spanish gazpacho, but I wanted to make it so everyone could try it. No nuts. Some people have nut allergies. And bread, I didn't want to add the carbohydrates, but if you add bread, stale bread will make it thick and will give a texture to it that gives it a nice body. Gazpacho with bread is better served room temperature, where gazpacho with nuts or just vegetables is better served chilled. So we put our salt, we put our pepper, our V8, our vinegar, our olive oil. Anytime I use a blender with liquid, I like to cover it lightly. And here we go. So I always recommend when you're pureeing food, start out slow and then come fast. If you start out fast, it can jump up on you. And if you make a smoothie sometime that's chunky, start and stop your machine. Just don't keep running it because the big pieces won't come to the bottom to get chewed up. So anytime you're pureeing something, start it and stop it. Good. Okay. So, yeah. It's done. So, what I have are a few, I have some croutons and I have some pumpkin seeds. I'm going to garnish some of them with. I like the pumpkin seed. It gives it a crispy, salty flavor to it. Hi, Chef Mark Valentine back here at the Acton Farmers Market. And we're getting ready to make farmers market salad with local ingredients we found at all the local stalls. And what we have here is some kale. Kale is very proficient in all year long, basically. But this time of year, it's cheap, it's plentiful. So we're going to base our salad on kale. And what I did is I washed and cut the kale real fine. And with kale, you want to sort of bruise it up. So what I'm doing here is taking the bag and squishing it up. You want to break down some of the fiberness of it. It's a good trick to have a raw kale salad by just abuse it a little. Give it a good squeeze. And what I did is I went to the stall, saw what was available, and I cooked about half the ingredients, and the other half I left raw because I like the textures and flavors of cooked and raw vegetables. So we have our kale here, and what I'm going to do is dress my kale first because, again, the kale is very fibrous, and we want to break down that chewiness to the kale. So by pouring our cider vinaigrette over the kale, we get it to start to break down, and it will be nice and tender instead of chewy and fibrous. So would you look for that grain? So what I'm going to do is just take my kale and mix in the vinaigrette and let it sit while we prep our other ingredients. You can see we have a good amount of dressing on the kale. So I have some fresh diced Gala apple here, give it a little sweetness. I also have some roasted butternut squash that I got because butternut squash just started coming in on the market, and to me it says fall. I roasted it with just a little clove. That's it. And we also have these beautiful little roasted potatoes I got from Applefield Farms. And I like how tiny they are. They're great little bites of creaminess, and they'll go well with the sweetness of the butternut squash. We also have some roasted carrot. I just peeled the carrots and roasted them. A little salt and pepper. We also have celery root. Celery root is, people don't really know what to do with celery root. Celery root is great in mashed potatoes. I like to use it in salads. It has an apple-like crisp to it and has a celery flavor. So all I did is I peeled the celery root. You can see I did what's called a baton. It's just a little stick. You could grate it, make it easy on yourself, and just grate it. I also have some spring wheat berries. Now, wheat berry is the whole kernel of the wheat. This came from Vermont. I picked it up when I was there in the spring. And the wheat kernel's going to give it almost a nutty flavor, and it gives it a great texture. High in protein. That way the salad could be a meal, or it could just be used as a side dish. I also have some fresh chopped scallions. These came from Mentor Flats Farm stall, and this will just give us a little bit of acidity and some of that umami flavor we want. I also have some fresh arugula. I want the arugula to give it some bitterness. I really like bitter greens, especially with the kale, which can be a little bland. It has great texture, but the arugula and the kale together will really complement each other. So we have an apple cider vinaigrette. The apple cider vinaigrette was just apple cider vinegar, reduced apple cider, Stillman Lilac Hedge Farms honey, olive oil, salt, and pepper. So, and you can just take it and blend it up. We will have the recipe online if you're looking for it, so check online for all our recipes that you've seen today. Now, all I'm doing is mixing, just taking the kale and mixing in all the other ingredients. So you could use you could put grapes in here, you could put celery, whatever you find in the farmer's market. Everything I found, everything in the salad I just found here, except for the wheat berries. So, and by tossing it, the butternut squash gets a little squishy, so it blends in well with the vinaigrette. I think I'm going to go a little bit more wheat berries. And then for a treat, we're going to top the salad with some of the Stillman Farms smoked Cajun chicken. So it's going to give it a little spiciness, some real smokiness. You could also use bacon or ham or chicken would go well, anything, or you could eat it just vegetarian. The wheat berries give you a great amount of protein. The wheat berry has the whole germ on it, so it has the endosperm, the bran. So it's the healthiest part of wheat are the wheat berries. And they're so simple that you just soak them overnight and cook them 30 minutes, and you'll really notice the crunch of the wheat berries. Okay, and it's done. Great thing about salad. Chop your vegetables, make your vinaigrette, toss it, done, eat. So I am gonna give it a try, make sure it's right. Wow, that's good. So might as well use up all my vegetables. I'm just gonna add rest of my celery root. No holding back here at the farmer's market. Okay, so your proportions can be whatever you want them to be. Be bold, use up what you have in the refrigerator. And I like, for vinaigrettes, I like mine vinegary. I really like the taste that there's vinegar in it. So you can see the beautiful colors, the fall colors of the butternut squash, the apples, the celery root, potatoes, and you can see those wheat berries in there. And they just gonna add such a nice nutty flavor to it. So, thank you for participating in our demo, and we hope to see you down here next Sunday, and have a good week and happy cooking. Thank you.